for anyone who is not familiar with Friends of Elephants, I will start by introducing it. Friends of Elephants is not an organization. Rather, it is an informal gathering of people with varied expertise in elephants and other wildlife. The group comes together for the dissemination of knowledge relating to elephants, wildlife science, and conservation, as well as welfare through art, culture, literature, movies, and panel discussions. Friends of Elephants began 9 years ago in April in 2014 as an offline gathering, and it became a virtual gathering from 2020. So the expectation of this event is to gain knowledge in a very informal way to develop conservation measures for wildlife, including elephants. I will start by introducing myself by starting the schedule. So today I will do the introduction for the Friends of Elephants talk. The talk is on introduction of non-related captive Asian male elephants in Laos by Anabel Lopez Perez. And she will be conversing with Michael Falshaw on how captive elephants can help save wild populations in Laos. Okay, so an introduction on myself. I'm Sukanya David, and I work as a program officer at the Wildlife Trust of India. I achieved my master's in conservation in 2019 at the University of Exeter and WTI in 2020. I work with frontline conservationists, whether it's government agencies or grassroots organizations, to address critical threats to wildlife. One of the examples of this is the Green Corridor Champions, who are our partners across India, and they work in our 37 elephant corridors to monitor anthropogenic threats, sensitize fringe communities, and liaise with local governments for preserving corridors and ensuring safe passage for elephants. So now I'll introduce our speaker, Anabel Lopez. And Anabel Lopez Perez has been working as a wildlife biologist and head of research and education at the Elephant Conservation Center in Laos since 2013. She has been responsible for the overall welfare of resident elephants. In 2018, she introduced scientific methods to the breeding programs by setting up the only endocrinology laboratory for wildlife in Laos, further developing the overall conservation capacity for the country in collaboration with the Smithsonian Institute, USA. In 2020, she started her PhD program at the University of Chiang Mai in collaboration with the Smithsonian Institute. The majority of her thesis is dedicated to studying the social dynamics among all male elephant groups. And the ultimate goal of Anabel's research is to improve welfare of male elephants under human care. She has also contributed to guidelines for the rehabilitation of captive elephants as a possible restocking option for wild populations of the IUCN SSC Asian Elephant Specialist Group. Thank you, Anabel, for joining us. I will also be introducing Michael. Just a moment. Sorry about that. Michael Falshaw is a forest and wildlife conservationist from Liverpool, England. He's been working in Laos since 2016, and he came to the Elephant Conservation Center in 2018 and is in charge of conservation projects, including forest management, protected area law enforcement, wild elephant monitoring, and captive elephant reintroduction programs. Michael has studied tropical forest conservation at both Yale's School of Environment and Bangor University. He is currently head of conservation for the Elephant Conservation Center and an independent research fellow in the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute, with a focus on elephant reintroduction protocols and methodology. He spends extensive time in the field working with local government officials, mahouts, and rangers on capacity building and training. And the Q&A session will be moderated by Sanjay Ajanikar, and I'll invite Anabel to start her talk.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for welcome me during this. I think it's very great what you're doing. So I will start to share the screen and I can start the presentation. Is everybody can see the screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we can.
All right, thanks. All right, so today I would like to introduce a little part of my PhD, and it's called the Introduction of Non-Related Captive Asian Male Elephant in Lao PDR. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, sorry. So as everybody knows, elephants are highly social animals, and in fact, they spend a great deal of their time interacting with members of the groups. So for an elephant, it's very important to spend time with other members of the group, because during these social interactions, they learn vital information for their survival, such as ecological and social knowledge around. However, most of the study of the social dynamics are mostly focused on female elephants. We know that female elephants, they live in these mature linear herds with this very fluid fusion, fission society. And everything when we read about elephant society is mostly dedicated to the female elephants. But what do we know about male elephants? Until very recently in the literature, we just read that male elephants, they were mostly solitary. They live in these maternal herds until they reach puberty, which is 10 to 15 years old. And once they reach puberty, they leave the maternal herd, and since then they are solitary. However, recent studies about Asian elephants and also African elephants, they start to observe that this is not entirely true, and that male elephants are actually much more social than we thought. In fact, they spend they share the time, right? Female elephants, they always stay with these maternal groups, very strong social bonds, and they barely split up. However, male elephants are much more flexible, and they spend time with other males in what we call male groups of baccalaureate herds. They also spend time with female elephants in what we call mixed groups, or they simply spend time alone. What motivates male elephants to share the time with other males, females, with other males, with females, or in their own is actually age, the reproductive state of the male at that point, and the forage abundance in the area, the kin relationship around, and maybe some risk of mortality. There are more and more studies that they start to observe that when male elephants do crop riding, they associate it with other males. So they're actually looking for social companion to solving problems, and in that case, solving danger. However, male elephants in captivity, they are not followed this pattern. There is a lot of now effort put in making sure that female elephants, they live in social groups also in captivity, because we know how important it is for female elephants to be in these social groups. However, since we have this all information that male elephants are always solitary, we also keep them mostly solitary in captivity, especially in countries like Laos. We acknowledge that male elephants are much more difficult to handle than female elephant, especially when they go through mass. And because of these issues, they mostly keep themselves alone. Mahouts are afraid to put them with other elephants. They are worried that they will fight with another male, they will hurt the females. And for all of these social beliefs, for all of these problems around male elephants in captivity, they will mostly stay, keep them alone, and their social needs are rarely addressed. But why it is important to properly socialize male elephants? So male elephants are elephants, and elephants are all of them highly social animals, and they need to spend time with other males and with other females to learn social skills and behavior. By having a population of captive male elephants, and that they behave similar to those in the wild, they will also facilitate the conservation of both captive and wild population. So right now we have a captive population of male elephants, I would say in Laos, when they have very poor social skills. They don't know necessarily how to socialize with other elephants, how to socialize with a female, with a male. And this is a big problem for all the conservation efforts that we want to establish in the country. In order to address these problems, the Elephant Conservation Center was set up in 2011, and we host around 30 captive elephants in 530 hectares of forest. Well, the main goal of the ECC is to work in the preservation of the Lao elephant population through high welfare standard, set up wild elephant conservation, set up the only breeding program in the country, work in research, and try to see how we can reintroduce captive elephants back into the wild. In order to address the main the problem that male elephants face in captivity in Laos, we decided to set up this research with the ultimate goal to see if we can integrate the male of different backgrounds into all male groups. So our main question was, can we provide a social dynamics in captivity for these male elephants similar to what happened in the wild? In order to do that, we wanted to document all the introduction steps and everything that we did during the process. And then with all of this data, we would like to study all the social dynamics among all of these male groups that we create. And we hope that the ultimate goal using this data and the knowledge through this study will improve the male elephant welfare and the human care in the future, especially in Laos, but then hopefully that can be expand to other countries where they manage elephant in a similar way. So this is our all the male elephants that they were included in the study. There were a total of 8 male elephants, and the age range varied from 9 to 58 years old. The background of these elephants, they were mostly the adults one, they were mostly working in the logging industry. There were a couple of elephants that they were trained to perform circus shows, and it was only one elephant, Surya, that he never been work or trained to perform shows, as he was he arrived to the center at very, very little age. None of these elephants are related, and none of them have social interactions as a regular basis before they came to the ACC. So afterward, they were isolated, and they barely have social interaction, neither with females or with males. So we have this population of 8 elephants, and we wanted to introduce them with each other. And it was a bit of the challenge because mahouts in Laos, they never socialized male elephants, so they were very scared of doing that. And we didn't know what it was the right method to do that in a safe way. So we decided to follow the standard introduction method that we use for the female, that is mostly divided in 3 main categories. So one is to allow the animals to get familiar with each other with visual, auditory, and olfactory contact. So during this step, the elephants, they will not touch each other. But they will smell. They know that there are other animals over there. However, since our males, they were sharing the space, they were living at the ECC for more than 2 to 3 years, we decided to skip this step because they were already being through visual, auditory, and olfactory contact with each other for a couple of years. But what we did is, before we introduced the elephants, we decided to collect fecal sample for a year before we start the project to have some baseline of cortisol and testosterone levels of each individual before we do the introductions. When we have this baseline of hormone data, then we started to move forward in the introduction process. So then we have a step that we call limited tactile contact, and the third step will be the full physical introduction. In both steps, we collect endocrine data through fecal samples. We also collect behavior data of all our males, and we also talk a lot with the mahouts. So try to integrate mahout knowledge into the management part of the project. In the method, the behavioral data were mostly divided in 2 main categories. So one was the main behavior, which was aggressions versus affiliative behavior. And we decided that aggression, we wanted to divide it into 2 categories, that there are contact aggression and non-contact aggressions. We also collect activity budget during the full physical introduction. So we wanted to know the amount of time that the elephant spends socializing, eating, and being inactive, walk, bath, out of vision, and other. So we wanted to separate what the overall activity of the individual, and when they interact with other elephants, what they will do. If they were mostly do aggressions, or they were mostly do affiliative behavior, or 50-50. We don't. We also collect fecal samples. We collect fecal samples before the social introduction, and then 48 hours after the social interaction. And with these fecal samples, we wanted to monitor testosterone on fecal glucocorticoids during the process. So like this, we can have an overall view, not only of the behavior, but also some physiological data would happen inside the body of the elephant when they spend time with other males. Here is a picture of the limited tactic contact. We see during this step, the mahouts were very afraid. I recall that because this was the first time that they did something like that, I would say, in the country. So they allowed the elephants to, so what we did some walks in the forest. So the elephants, they were walking in a line. And then after that, they did some breaks. And in these walking breaks, the mahouts allowed the elephant to interact with each other. But you can see all of the elephants, they were wearing the chain on the neck because the mahouts were very worried. If they engage it in a fight, they will not be able to control the elephant. So at least what they could do, it was just restrain it in the forest and wait until the behavior stops. So we can see here that some of the mahouts, they were on the neck, some of them, they were in the ground, but everybody have very close eyes in all the interaction. And this is a little bit the transition, also the mahout confidence through the process. So at the beginning, all the mahouts were on the necks of the elephants. Everybody was very stressed out. And we can see that, surprisingly, the behavior that we observe in the elephants, they were much more affiliative than aggressions. So then mahouts started to feel more comfortable, start to, let them interact more and more. And then you can see here in the second picture that many of the mahouts, they were not reading the elephant anymore. Some of them, they still on the necks. And it will be a point where the mahouts, they feel comfortable that the elephants, they will not hurt each other. And they were close to the elephants observing the interaction, but they let them more and more space. When we reach this point, when we know already what elephants perform, like what elephants like to be with other elephants, right? We can see like this social companion, who can be with whom, who is always fighting with whom. Then we decide that we could move forward to the full physical introduction. While in this step, we were the observer. So we released the elephants in an open space. It was very, very important for this step that none of the male elephants were restrained. So if they started in an aggressions, the submissive elephant, they could run away, and the dominant elephant will not be able to hurt the animal. They will be able to handle the situation by themselves. So in this step, what was very difficult was actually know when to intervene, when we had to let the elephants set out their hierarchy, set out their difference, versus when it was a time for us to intervene because the fight could actually lead in a dramatic situation. Fortunately, we never need to intervene in that case. So everything went better that we thought. So here is a little video of how this full physical introduction will look like. And this is some of the sparring. And you can see here. You see, so we can see there is this young male, and there's actually 3 generations there. So the elephant on the left, it was our older male, it was about 60 years old. Then the one in the middle is in their between 25 to 30-year-old. And then we have our young male of 9-year-old. And then we can see that there was some sparring, some interaction, but everything was very smooth, and it was never a strong need for us to intervene. So you can see that there was a, and just this, it was already very difficult for the mahouts at the beginning because they thought it was already a fight. And so it was also a learning process for the mahouts to understand when it was an sparring, like a friendly sparring, and when it was a situation when we need to intervene. Then when we collect all this data, and then we do the quick analyze. And then we can see that the rate of behavior per minute was much more bigger, higher in the affiliative category than in the aggressive category. So most of the elephants perform more affiliative behavior than aggression, which I was very surprised because we thought it will actually be the opposite, right? Then when we display this rate of affiliative behavior per elephant, we can see that all the males, no matter age or social background, all of them display a rate of affiliative behavior. There's a lot of like diversity. Each elephant displays this rate of affiliative behavior in a different way, but also we have some personalities. So some males were more social than others, but overall, all of them, they show some affiliative behavior. Then when we do the same with aggressive behavior, we can see that the rate of aggressive behavior per elephant was much more lower. The affiliative one, we can see that the y-axis, the scale is different, so it's much more lower. And which is interesting here is that the aggressive behavior was much more homogeneous through the males, and not all the males perform aggressive behavior. So there are two individuals that is in the very first introduction step, they didn't perform any aggression, which was also very positive. And then when we analyze aggressive between, like when we devise contact aggressions between non-contact aggressions, we can see that contact aggressions were in lower rate than non-contact aggression, which is also very positive because it means male elephants, they can set up their difference without actually necessarily engage in a fight. So it was very, very positive. Here we could see how affiliative and aggressive behavior were over time. So 0 is the first day that we put these elephants together. And then we can see that in day 0, all the elephants, they perform a high rate of affiliative behavior the first day, but they were not aggressions. So aggressions start more like around day 10. So it means that the first reaction of these male elephants, they were not fight or kill each other. It was actually explore, and there was a lot of touching the tusk, touching the genitals. So they were very interesting of each other rather than the opposite, right? And the aggressions stay constant over time, while affiliative behavior decrease over time. And we thought this is also was very interesting, is that maybe the beginning they were very, enthusiastic. It was also very new, so they perform a lot of affiliative behavior, while over time, and this regular social interaction become more routine for them. So they reduce the amount of time that they interact with each other, but aggressive behavior stay always in a very low rate in a constant time, or like in a constant rate over time. We decided to analyze all of these things per individual. So we decided to analyze how affiliative and aggressive behavior behave over time per individual. And we can see that it's a little bit the same pattern to all the individuals will be the same. So all of them, they perform affiliative behavior before they start to perform aggressions. And the rate of affiliative behavior decreased over time. And there were 2 individuals here that they never expressed any aggressions during the entire limited tactile contact step. When we put all these elephants together without mahout interaction, and they were completely free to express any behavior, we observe exactly the same thing, that affiliative behavior was more significantly higher expressed than aggressions. And in that case, we can see that contact aggressions were expressed higher than non-contact aggressions, maybe because the mahouts were not around to tell them not to spar or not to be physical. So again, it's in a very lower rate compared with affiliated behavior. So this was very positive as well. And then during this full physical introduction, we also wanted to see how affiliative and aggressive behavior were progressed over time. So again, day 0 is the first day that the elephant, they were completely free to interact with each other. And then we can see that affiliative behavior, it slightly increased over time, but it stayed constant in a higher rate than aggressive behavior. And aggressive behavior stay constant over time, and in that case, aggressive contact were slightly higher than non-aggressive contact. When we see the activity budget, surprisingly, we could see that the second activity budget more performed by the male elephants were socialized, which interact with other male. So of course, the first one was eating, with almost, they spent that 45% of their time, but then was followed by socializing and then other kind of activity budget. So again, this is proof that for male elephants, it is also very important to spend time with other animals, and in that case, with other males. And when you give them the chance, they will spend time with each other. So what we achieved so far with this study is that we successfully proved that male elephants in captivity, they can interact with other elephants. And thanks to this study, we provide social time, regular social interactions to all our resident males. And non-elephants or mahouts were injured during the process. And thanks to that, the mahouts start to realize that male elephants, they will not kill each other, that is important to put them together. And actually, they start to use social companions of other males to solving problems. So if a male elephant is very difficult one day, they can bring a friend, male elephant, so they can handle the situation using social companions rather than force. So I think this is very beneficial for the elephants. It's safer for the mahouts, and makes everything under human care much more easier. What the next steps is, we would like to analyze all this endocrine data collected in the fecal samples. We would like to finish to analyze all the behavioral data and write our final introduction protocol and publish all of these results, so they can make this, we can make these guidelines based on behavior and physiological data rather than just our personal feelings. So yeah, I would like to thank all the advisors, all my advisors for this study. So Jaro Wancon, Janine Brown, Sifra Goldenberg, Dr. Chechot Tidaran, and Dr. Vidasak, that they were work at the Smithsonian and the Chiang Mai University, and of course the Elephant Conservation Center, to make sure that this project could happen. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will be very happy to answer any questions now or during the talk with Michael after.
Thank you so much, Anabel. That was a very interesting talk. And I would like to now call Michael, if possible, for the conversation on how captive elephants help save wild populations in Laos. And I also request the audience to please put their questions in the chat box, and we will discuss these in the Q&A session after Michael and Anabel's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. And well done, Anabel. That was really cool. Even though I know it, every time you give a presentation, I learn a little bit more about it, about the project.
Yeah, good. Sorry, I was a bit nervous. I hope everything was very clear during the talk.
So do you feel that there's a need to give any sort of maybe some context of where we work and what we do before to maybe limit the questions?
Okay.
I think you're better to do that. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background about the ETC and what we've been doing and how it's sort of transitioned over the last 10 years.
Sure. So before we talk about the ECC, I would like to give a brief introduction about the situation of the elephants in Laos. Because of course it might be completely different to the situation of the elephants in India, right? So in Laos, we have an estimated population of 800 elephants. 400 of these elephants are captive elephants, and the other 400 are wild elephants. Again, they are purely estimated numbers, and we believe that the numbers are lower than that, but we don't have the actual proof. So the reason that the wild elephant population is declining is mostly due to habitat fragmentation and deforestation. So we have a big problem in Laos. With that, we reduce the space of the elephants, that they also compromise the migratory movement of the elephants. They will also compromise their social interaction with, and we believe that maybe in the future we'll have more problems with human-elephant conflict, that these elephants will come out of the forest, finding crops, finding villagers, finding infrastructure. So we have some cases of poaching reported in the country. Again, it's not our main concern, but there is no proper data through that, so we don't know exactly what happened in the forest. Then we have a captive population of elephants, and having elephants in captivity in Laos is a tradition that dates more than 4,000 years ago. So in the past, historically, these elephants, they were working in the logging industry. And during these periods, Mahout, they didn't want to breed their elephants because having pregnant elephants, it was an inconvenience because they need to stop working the last year of the pregnancy and then 2 to 3 years where the calf was nursing. So it was about 4 to 5 years that the Mahouts didn't have any income. In addition to that, there is no proper vet care in the country. There is no local veterinarians. So elephants were get hurt or injured during the logging operations, but there were not calves born in the country to compensate the loss of the elephant. Yeah. So then the situation was like that until few years ago when the Prime Minister of Laos decided to stop the logging industry. So then all of these elephants and mahouts that they were working on the forest, they were moving to the tourist industry. And the tourist industry at the beginning was a bit chaotic. They tried to copy some models from Thailand that they were not necessarily the best one for the elephants. And this is why the ECC came into a scene. So in 2011, the ECC was decided to open the doors to see what we can do with these elephants, how we can reconvert these logging elephants into a setup more like into ecotourism, where we can generate some income for the mahouts, provide a good quality of life to the elephants, and have people come and learn while they visit the center. So the first year were mostly to work on the breeding, how we can set up the breeding program. We were more in these social protocols, how we can introduce all of these females and male elephants into these social groups. And with the time, we started to move more into conservation. And we started to focus more in research, because the more we know about the elephants, the better we can, implement conservation plans and actions around these animals. We start to work in education, so we set up MOU with a faculty of veterinary, so hopefully in the future we'll have more local professional, not only work in vet care, but also in research and behavior at the laboratory. So, in other words, to increase the capacity of the country for elephant conservation. And then we decided that we have some group of elephants that they were behaving similar to those in the wild, but we didn't have a proper forest for them to let them go. And this is where the work of Mike start, with the protection of these protected areas. That maybe you want to explain a bit this more, Mike?
Oh yeah. So Anabel did all the hard work, and then I take all the glory. I just put them in the forest for a little bit. I know Anabel has done so many great things on site at the ECC, and it's really because of the foundations that she laid in the years before I came, and with the mahouts and with everyone who worked at the center, that we were able to have a voice, maybe at a more national level, on elephant conservation issues, which sort of move into one national protected area called Nampui National Protected Area, and start to work more with the government and some wild elephant conservation programs there. And yeah, we also have our reintroduction program is based in this protected area also. So Nampui hosts the second largest elephant population, wild elephant population in Laos, of anywhere between 50 and 70 individuals, we'll say. The largest being about 100. But apart from those two, populations, all the other populations are scattered and isolated in no more than 20 individuals. Yeah, so this is something where, if we're going to talk about what can these captive elephants do to help their wild counterparts, then, I think really looking at these small isolated wild elephant populations that we have in Laos, that can be supplemented by captive elephants that have been socially bonded together at places like the ECC. This gives us a real chance of reversing some of the damage that's been done to elephants in Laos over the last, 30 years, I think, anyway. Because, we have these two populations, hey, Anabel?
Yes.
But outside of this, even if we say that we have 50 in Nampui and 100 in a place called Nekai Namtun, and let's say realistically, I know you say 400, but let's say realistically there's 300. And all the others, so 50% are in small isolated populations. If we don't do anything to address that, even with very good conservation programs for those two healthier populations, we're still going to lose half the population of elephants in Laos in the coming years, because they're not of a decent enough size to sustain themselves, or some of them aren't anyway. Some of them probably are. But yeah, that's where I really think the captive elephants can play, a real vital role in conservation in Laos by, us identifying a couple of these smaller, on the verge of being extinct populations, and try to supplement with socially coherent groups of captive elephants. If the problems have been fixed that caused the population to decrease in the first place. But I guess this is another problem, is the problems for wildlife in general, but for elephants, they change all the time. So in the space of we've been here, you would have definitely was, a much lower, poaching is a much lower problem. But as we know very well, Anabel, me and you, cassava production, so agricultural production, is probably, the biggest danger to elephants in Laos at the moment, because of how vast, this expansion and how quick this expansion is. So, as one problem sort of decreases, another problem arises, and I'm sure there'll be another one around the corner too.
But the good things of you can use. Elephants are very emblematic and charismatic animals, right? So by protecting the elephants or putting the excuse that these areas are elephant habitats, there will be more efforts to make sure we can protect the remaining habitat, which will be also beneficial not only for elephants but for all the species, especially not the non-charismatic ones, like, I don't know, snakes or insects, frogs, they live over there. So I think using the captive elephants to solve the problem of the wild elephant, it will not also serve for conservation for this species, but for many others that they have less attention, unfortunately. And also, we have a lot of captive elephants that are unemployed, right? They don't have anything to do because Laos is not one of the more visit country, and the tourists here, they're looking for different activities. So elephant interaction is very limited. We cannot have 4,000 elephants like in Thailand, where everybody have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So they're unemployed. They don't have anything to do.
Yeah. Even with 400, even if we have 400 captive elephants, there's probably not enough of a market, for all of them to be involved in even some sort of very nice tourism venture. We know because we work for one, and sometimes we don't have too many guests. So we know that there's not enough of a market for 10 elephant conservation centers in Laos to all run off ecotourism. So there needs to be other options for these captive elephants and for the owners. So these mahouts, if they can't use the elephant to make money, then why do they have the elephants? And it will become a burden. And I'm sure there's cases of this already in Laos, but the elephant will become too much of a burden, and they'll rather be pushed into an illegal sale, or be pushed to sell if it's worth more dead than alive, for some small parts of ivory or some skin or some hairs or something like this. Then these people will be pushed to try to make a living any way they can. And what we both know is true in Laos, and of course the situation is different all over the range. But in Laos, for me anyway, mahouts is two things. It's elephants, but it's forests. These guys, they know forests just as well as they know elephants. So they can be a really, they are currently a very underutilized tool in elephant conservation efforts, because they know elephants well, they know the habitat very well. So they're in a prime position to have those skills used, and that's where what I really like about our reintroduction effort is how mahout centric it is, because the mahouts run this project, and their ability to track these elephants in the forest. So just for a bit of context, the elephants we have in our reintroduction program have GPS collars now, but that wasn't always the case. For the first 3 years, we just rely on the mahouts' traditional skill set of being able to track elephants in a forest, and they would go to track them and just mark it with the GPS, and they would keep them safe this way. Now we have GPS collars on on all the individuals, but the mahouts, they still use their traditional knowledge. They'll call me to ask roughly where the elephants are, and then from there they'll use the poo, the tracks, and other methods to find them, and they still have the little bamboo bell, which works a treat. It works so well. So there's we need to find a solution for elephants, but we also need to find a solution for these guys to have some income. And again, the Lao government probably isn't interested in releasing 300 or 400 captive elephants into forest, but a small, well done reintroduction program that identifies where we're going to lose the wild elephant population with that if there's no intervention, and using those captive elephants to fix that is something I think should be at the forefront of the elephants conservation issues in Laos. Laos specifically, obviously, other countries have different issues.
Yeah, of course, it might be difficult for some people try to understand, because of course the problems are, Laos is completely different from Thailand, India, Myanmar, Cambodia. So the good thing in Laos is it's in the stage of developing now, and it's developing very fast, maybe in a bit chaotic way. So if we are not set up some conservation strategies, in that case with elephants, everything will be gone very quickly. So I think using this opportunity that Laos is the country of the million elephants, right? And the population is declining. So using the elephants to protect the forest, I think is a very it's a good strategy that fit maybe only in Laos, because maybe for other countries it's not possible, or they have too many wild elephants. Like in the case of India, they will never think about that, right? It will be the opposite. But for Laos, I think we have empty forest, and there is a space, and most of the habitats are suitable for elephants. So the most important part is to protect the forest and to prepare the elephants before we release them. So once they are released, they don't face problems, looking for sources. If they encounter a wild elephant, they will not, they know how to behave. So I think this is the most important part. And then hopefully by having this project around, the government also starts to see more and more the value of protecting these spaces, because there might be also some kind of income over there for some tourists to come to see, a forest, which is something that we don't have many left around, right? So maybe.
Yeah, I can see some questions coming through. Am I supposed to leave the questions until the end, or am I supposed to answer them as they come as they come in? What would you like me to do?
Hi, Michael. Hi.
Yeah, man.
It has been very fascinating discussion, I must say. And, so it's up to you guys. If you want to continue conversation, you can please go ahead. And once you're done, then we can start taking the questions.
Okay. So we can continue a little bit talking and then we do the questions.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Up to you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I think what I think we wanted to pitch it is the most important is that the situation of Laos is unique. We don't have many elephants left, so we were focused on the breeding and try to increase the numbers. But when we started to doing that, then we thought, and what we're gonna do with all of these elephants in captivity, because they don't have things to do, right? And there is a risk for them to go to other countries or to disappear, in the way. So this is why using them for conservation, other countries, they use it also for conservation. They do ranger patrols on their elephants, right? They do this in Indonesia, they do this in India. So there are many other different ways that we can use them, not just for entertainment, but and also I think at the center they play a good role in education as well. It's very difficult to see elephants in the forest, right? And many of these behavioral studies, right? When we put the GPS collar of the release elephants, I was very happy. Oh, I'm gonna see some behavior with my little book and my pen, and I didn't see anything, and it was actually dangerous because it was in the mountain, right? You were not in your tower observing the elephants as here, so it's actually you understand how difficult it is to do some behavioral studies of wild elephants. So having 30 elephants with different age, different backgrounds, but it's still were born in the forest and they are similar to the wild elephants. They can give you a better understanding of how elephants behave, what are their behaviors, how they work. We can also set up some research techniques, like you see in this case, we collect hormones from the fecal sample, but there are many other tests that we can do, and we can use these captive elephants to set up standards and to set up techniques that can be used later in the future to monitor the wild elephants. Some veterinarians, they can come and learn from taking care, put an injection of a captive elephant. So if in the future a wild elephant is sick, they will already have the experience, right? So the elephants that cannot be released, I think at the ECC, they still play a role in conservation in a different way, which is through education, through research, and to making sure that they become the ambassador of the wild elephants, because thanks to them, then we learn many things that we can use to protect the wild ones, right? And we are very lucky that we can go every day and and see them up close, because in the forest it will take years to have a study of like what I did for the males, because you will see just one ear, or like this you can collect.
Do you think this is why there's a lack of this sort of data in Asian elephants? Do you think it's because of how difficult it is?
Yeah, definitely. And this is why most of the behavior studies are mostly done in Africa, right? Because Africa is savanna, open areas. You can monitor the same group of elephants for years. You can monitor them by car. You can monitor them by plane. Then you can have a lot of. You can see the elephants. You can see the behavior, while in the forest is difficult. And in Asia, Mostly they are in India and Sri Lanka, all of these studies, because there are some flat open space of grasslands that you can observe it. But in Laos, if you go to Nam Pui, it's dangerous because you need to be very close. You will not see them, and if you see them, and they will probably, you will have to run away before you can even take a note, right? So this is a challenge of the Asian elephant, is the terrain, the landscape is different from the African ones. We always thinking that because they are elephants, African and Asian elephants, they are the same, but the more we study them, the more that they are not the same. And we need to know these differences because later they are the key for the conservation actions, right? What they need, how they behave, the size group, all of these things. So this is another aspect that they can also be inserted for conservation if they cannot be released.
Because we have to be realistic, like I said before, we're never going to release them all. Rather, the elephants aren't going to be good candidates, the governments aren't going to want to it, the local people are not going to be like, yeah, give me 400 captive elephants, like sniffing around my farms. There's a bunch of things where, release for the sake of release because it's a beautiful story or something like this. Yeah, sure, but it will impact people's lives. So you have to be very careful about doing so, and that's why you have to have, some good data to back up that it's a good conservation, effort to do it. You need to have everything in place. You can't just be releasing 400 elephants, no one's going to sign up for that. So yes, a lot of elephants, and I'm not even sure if, elephants in human care. I don't know if do we want to get rid of that? I don't know if there is a deep connection for 4,000 years in this country of humans and elephants, working together in some way. I'm not sure if culturally they're willing to give that up. I'm not sure of any country in the range. I know India and Sri Lanka still have very strong connections to elephants. I don't know if they're willing to, if they would wish that they didn't have captive elephants anymore. I'm not sure that's the case.
I don't.
So we will still have a captive population in Laos for probably longer than we're all around.
But this is why it's important. So we're going to have captive elephants, but how we're going to keep them to provide the good living standard? Because again, having elephants on chains of 2 meters, socially isolated, fully with the stereotypical behavior, wounds, full of diseases, skinny because they are not living in the forest. So I think, again, the role of these elephants, that they have the chance to live in the forest, again, they can serve to make all of these protocols, right, to compare the difference between an elephant living in a poor management setting, right, versus an elephant that they also live under human care. They are all taking care of mahouts, but the difference is the management around. So again, how these elephants can help in conservation, but also to improve the welfare of the elephants that they cannot be released, and to show, okay, both elephants, they were living under human care. Both elephants have mahouts, but not because they are under human care, they need to suffer, they need to be full of wounds. This is not acceptable anymore. And especially in countries when they have such a deep connection, how a mahout can how you want to see an elephant in India suffering, or in Laos, if it's, so again, the answer is yes, there will be captive elephants, but the question is how we're going to keep these captive elephants, and how we're going to learn to make sure we don't make this mistake, because in the past we didn't have this problem, because the elephants and the mahouts, they were living in the forest. It's more the convenience of the visitors. Oh, I want to see an elephant, I will bring next to you, right? So so it's something that is not actually tradition. It's not a tradition, at least in Laos, to have some visitors come to feed bananas with an elephant. The tradition is just to work with your elephant in the forest, and when you don't have work to do, you release the elephant, right? So I think
This is probably where the welfare, lots of those welfare issues started, is when they were taken out of the, even if the elephants were pulling logs in the forest, let's just say in Laos, at the end of the day, they were back in the natural habitat, you know, and they would have worked only God knows how many hours, whatever. But yeah, it's a new thing in Laos. It would be foreign for most of these traditional Mahout who are loggers to like parade their elephants around a little bit. So in an area, in an enclosure on concrete, you know, where they have to give them each piece of food that they eat. They don't go looking for the food themselves. So yeah, all of this will have been very, very new to Mahout in Laos, you know, in the last 20 years even.
Yeah, so this is, yeah, sorry, go ahead,
I couldn't resist myself, you know, not jumping into discussions and very interesting aspects you guys are talking, and especially when Anabel said that when it's very difficult to observe elephants, you know, we talk about the behavioral aspect of the wild elephants, and I'm totally with you. And I would say in India, we have grasslands, but they are also, it's like we're almost asking where are the grasslands, you know? So it's that's the scenario. So, you know, we recently put a GPS tag on one elephant in one of the northeastern state in India. And we put a collar and we were discussing about it, Michael and Anabel, that it's been more than a month. We haven't seen the elephant after putting the collar. You know, that's a situation. We can't see them. So I can, you know, agree with you. Although, you know, once they are in captivity, the behavior would be different, but it would not be drastically different, you know, if one has to do the behavioral study. And I think from there, and I asked the first question. So it's an observation by Vadi Raj from India, and I would like to say that a lot of the people joined from different countries, and I'm really glad about it. Somebody joined from Indonesia. Obviously, we have an event from the guest from the Laos, and you know, so welcome to everybody. Somebody joined from Belgium. So going back to the Vadi's comment, and he talked about he appreciated the plan that you have of reintroducing the captive elephants into the wild. Okay, so I would like to pick up from there and ask this question: that how it has been planned, and have you already done it? Is it in the pipeline? Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so we already did our first release in 2019. So in the way it was planned, so first we started to have a lot of elephants coming, right? So we set up this social introduction protocol, and we try to create this not create, because we don't create, like we let the elephant, you know, the time to meet each other, and then our job was to observe would elephants potentially create these social bonds. Then we reach the point when we have a group of elephants that they have close bonds, and they are very socially coherent. And then we wanted to move forward, but we didn't have a forest. And I think this is important step, because many people think, oh, if elephants, they live so bad in captivity, why we just don't stop the captive elephants and release them all? It's because there is no forest to do that. And then this is when Mike started to work with the government to protect Nampui and to do these rangers. And when we thought, when we observed that the habitat in Nampui, they were suitable for elephants. In fact, there is an area where there is wild elephants living, and we have this ranger operation. Then we decided to move forward on the release, and we did. Well, Mike, I can explain you a bit more about that, but the first one was in 2019.
Right. And how many cases, total cases of such nature? How many total, you know, elephants have been gone from captivity to wild so far?
4.
Okay.
So we release 3 female and 1 juvenile male of it was 7 or 8.
Seven or eight. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was still very early age.
Right.
And he had some interaction with other wild males. So I think he's learning the skills at a very early age.
So there's one question from Point from the same concept, and he asks, is there any interaction that you have observed after the release between the captive which is being released and the wild elephant? Have you got opportunity? I know I'm not supposed to ask this question of going and observing the wild, but have you got an opportunity to observe those individuals who have been released into the wild? And anything you want to share around that?
Like, you mean like how we monitor the
Yes.
elephants
Yes.
when? Oh, so Mike can explain. Like, Mike, how do you monitor
Could you
the
repeat?
elephants?
Sorry, Anabel. I have a problem hearing your mic, Sanjay. It seems very muffled.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm speaking louder. Maybe I can just pause my video.
I can't hear. Anabel, could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, he asked, once we release the elephant, what are the steps we did to monitor them? What we did, like first
Sure.
you stay in the
So
forest.
the project was only, we only had the idea of running it for 3 months, because we had, like Anabel said, we had, we would let the elephants, this group we now had, after we found a strong social bond formed around this young juvenile male. We thought, okay, well, I would go into the forest with the mahout, and we would release the elephants in the morning, and we would just watch them. But we were so constrained because the census is, you're only, 30-minute walk away from a farm in any direction, unfortunately. So it really, constrained us physically, and, for the project, we weren't able to do it for days on end. So we asked if we could take it to this area of Nampui, and we would monitor them every day. We would stay in the forest essentially with them. So, there wouldn't be any problems. If they went close to the border of Thailand, which this park shares, we would take them. If they went too close to a farm, we would take them. If it got too dangerous, we would stop it. So the government gave us the permission for 3 months. And me and the mahouts went to find them every day. And we would just assess where they are, and this is where the mahouts really came in, because they know this forest like the back of their hand. So they could, wherever we were, say, they're a bit too close to the Thai border, or maybe by the time we get back tomorrow, they would be too close, we should intervene. Or, oh, I know it looks like we're very far, but actually there's a shortcut here, and then they can get to a military base. So, their deep understanding of this area, being locals from this area, was, invaluable. I would never have swapped it for a GPS collar, So this was the first 3 months. And then after this, when everything was going really well, no instances of human elephant conflict, no attempts to go to a farm, nothing, just in the forest. So we were like, can we do it for 6 more months? Then can we do it for a year? Then can we do it for 2 years? And then, so now we have permission till the end of 2024 to keep this project running. And obviously thank God, we're a bit more hands off these days. We don't, I don't spend every night in the forest anymore. But so now we have GPS collars, like we said. And these mahouts, I like to call them now like the tracking team. It's 5 guys for these 4 elephants. I just spoke with them before. I speak to them every day. We have a WhatsApp group, and I let them know where the elephants are. And then if I notice anything on the GPS, they can go and check. If they get too close to a border again, they can go and check. And this is how we keep the project. So we've almost plateaued as a project until the governments are ready to say, okay, let's change the legal status. Let's, cut ribbons and shake hands, and let's call this a release and work on a reintroduction program, maybe across the country. Until that was sort of just like, the elephants are in the forest, they're safe, they're getting pretty wild. So, you know, the government, I will go to speak to the government next week about this to say, you need to make a decision soon, because soon you won't be able to bring them back if you want. The release is working. We'll say that, you know, they can be aggressive. You know, sometimes they don't want us around.
It's a very interesting, and I must say it's incredible work that you guys are doing. And you talked about mahouts and you're using them as a tracking team. I hope I'm audible now, Michael. Let me try. So
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So I want to ask both of you, because Michael just said about using mahouts as a tracking team, okay? And Anabel, you also mentioned about the ecotourism model, okay? So how effective it is in Laos, you know, in terms of using them as a tracking team, or otherwise, you also talked about you know, income because logging is closed. So how it is being taken care of, and how effective the ecotourism model in Laos?
We thought to do some ecotourism around, but we're a bit skeptical about that, because bring tourists to the national park first, it might be dangerous. To be honest, I don't know if you're going to encounter a bunch of wild elephants. It's a bit scary, right? And second, we want to make sure and that by bringing people, we don't disturb wildlife. So there might be some activities that they can do, and there might be some, but I think the best way is to bring the visitors here to see the pre-release, to see like what we call behind the scene. And then thanks to the support, they can do the one of we can release. And again, it's difficult to understand, because when I went to India, you know, I went to Quebec National Park. I also went to another park in Assam, and there are flat areas that you can do in a car, very safe. And then you do the loop, and then you have some areas where the visitors can go. There are some areas where the visitors cannot go, but it's flat, right? In Laos, in Nampui, it is not the case. You cannot go by car, you need to trek. So it's much more dangerous. It's not safe. If you break a leg in the middle of Nampui, there is not even signal with your phones. So it's much more difficult for us to bring tourists there to see wildlife safely, because we work in mountain landscape when you actually really need to trek. So I think the best strategy is for the, I don't know if Mike wants to add something about that.
Yeah. So I guess I spent obviously the most time with these released elephants, apart from the mahouts. And for me now, I'm completely convinced that it's not possible to do ecotourism. The elephants have convinced me enough. I've climbed enough trees and ran down enough streams to know that, you know, yeah, it's obviously a very beautiful thing to see, and people, of course, will oh wow, that would be great. But it takes a very good communication between myself and the mahouts when we're with the elephants, of, you know, stay there, go up there, come back, come with me, do this, do that. And because I can speak in Lao with them, that's okay. But then adding a group of tourists to this and having to go through this in another language, and okay, and you know, I'm relatively experienced at doing this by now. If this is your first time in a tropical forest, the risk definitely outweighs the reward in the project's current state, you know. Of course, people do tourism around wildlife all the time, but just where we are is a very remote province of a very remote country. You know, the infrastructure is really not really in place for this sort of stuff yet. So in its current state, it's a little bit too dangerous to offer to the general public, you know. I just took a photographer there last week, And it's so stressful for me now to take people there because I'm always feel like, oh God, what's going to happen? I really need to look after this guy because it can be pretty tricky. So
Yeah, I
for me,
understand that.
ecotourism around this release is not really an option at the moment. But you can see
Right.
elephants free roaming in a forest at the ECC. You know, it's only the story behind that makes it more magical. That these you know, the release, the slightly bigger forest and so on. But yeah,
I'm sorry to cut you in the interest of the time because there are a couple of questions. So there's one question from one second. So it's from GD, I don't know the name, from Belgium, where you know, they're asking about how in Laos elephants are coping up with the slash and burn practice and the toxic air. Is that a problem?
so yeah, there's the air quality has been very, very bad in Laos for the last month or so. But where the elephants are, it's fine. It's pretty deep in the forest. It was a nice place to be throughout the you know, March and April, because yeah, it's in the towns, in the cities, in the villages, it was terrible. But in the forest, everything was okay. So as far as I know, everything was okay for them.
Nice. So there is a follow-up question. So what we will do, I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the audience, GD. So we'll share the you know, your email ID. You can take forward the conversation that you're asking about. I'll take a couple of more questions. There are some questions from Sharad from India. What was the time frame of the study? Were any of the elephants in must while you did the study? Very interesting. And any Makhna or tuskless males in the study? If yes, were there any difference in behaviors of such elephants? And what is the status of human elephant conflict in Laos? So maybe you can take first two questions and then you can jump to the third question.
So
I'll let you take the first two, Anabel, and then I'll take the third one.
okay. So the first, the frame time of the study is, you mean like when the study will be published, or so?
The study duration.
So the behavioral stage and the fecal sample collection are already done. We are now on the lab analyze, so we are doing all the hormone extractions and all the analyze. So we hope that the study will be finished by the end of the year, at least the first paper for the introduction. And they were male in mass, but when the males were in mass, we didn't bring them with the other males. Not because I personally think they cannot interact when they are in mass. I would love to see that. It's because of management issues. We don't have the facility where we can bring a male in mass safely. So I think when the male elephants, they were in mass, they were in the forest, they were by themselves, follow the mass protocols. And not because I don't think they can socialize, it's because for management issues. But saying that, when they were in mass, there were a couple of males that they do socialize with females. So what we try to recreate here in the wild, when male elephant are in masked males, they don't spend time with other males. Mostly when they're in mass, they do roving, they were looking for female in estrus. So where male are in mass, we put them with the female elephants for breeding. What we did, the male is restrained, the female is free. And we use them for the breeding program. So the female can choose to stay or not, but the male is restrained during mass. So I think this is what we're gonna do in the future. When they are in mass, we cannot bring them with other males, but we will try to bring females, and especially we have some female in estrus, to try to mimic as much as possible. And we have two males that they were with the females during mass. So again, they make the mahouts feel more comfortable that the males, they will not kill the female when they're in mass, and they can socialize. So little by little, I think this is how we're gonna move forward on that. And the other question, oh yeah, there are one taskless male. It's difficult for me to say is there a difference in behavior because he's one of the juveniles. So he's the second youngest of the group. And he's very young, and he's mostly the Sumis. But of course, I don't know, I think it's Sumis because it's low in ranking because he's young. No, I don't think it's not. I cannot say it's because he didn't have the task. But he's highly social animal. Is one of the one who interact the most. He interact with everybody. If we compare in similar, so it's him and the other one, Surya, they are similar age. One is with task and he doesn't have the task. The guy with the task is dominant over him because he poking with the task and he's terrifying of that. So male of the same age, I don't know, it's difficult for me to say if I observe any difference in behavior because he's young. So many of the difference I observe is mostly because of age and body size rather than the task anatomy. So this is why more studies, they need to be done in the future, you know, when they include more maybe taskless males and see like how they do in the dominant hierarchy, in the rank. We have one male without task, but the mahouts they didn't want to include in the study, so we missed the opportunity. So hopefully in the future we can study these behaviors a bit more with some physical, like include task or not task males. And then is the question for Mike.
So human elephant conflict in Laos, I guess we don't know too much about the extent, probably for a couple of reasons. I think because there is no government program to compensate for this sort of problem, that what's the point in calling the government to tell them about it when you know that they're not going to help. So I guess maybe it's worse than we think, but people just aren't incentivized to come forward to talk about it. It doesn't seem, for the information I have in front of me, too bad, you know, when you compare it to Thailand, India, Sri Lanka, you know, who have, you know, causes many deaths every year of elephants and humans. But like Anabel touched on before, Laos is a fastly developing country, and that always equals forest loss, you know, forest cover loss. So who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years if these problems will, you know, exacerbate. Like I mentioned briefly earlier before, cassava production is eating away at these, you know, non-protected small natural forest patches that are close to protected areas and stuff. You know, they're really sort of clearing a lot of these like just natural forests that are around, which, you know, could cause problems. I know from working in Nampui that cassava is a big problem for us at the moment, and I'm sure it will be a big problem for the elephants sooner rather than later. In terms of releasing elephants, and would this exacerbate the problem? Well, then you just can't release elephants in where this is going to be a problem. You know, you have to pick the spots, you have to pick the right place for a release. And that's where I think this approach that we've used of a soft release with the mahouts, who can, you know, still be the barrier between the community and the elephants, really frees us up to try, you know, because if it doesn't work, if in 2019, if these 4 elephants just made a dart for the bananas every week, then we just have to say, okay, we tried, we will learn from this, and we go back to the drawing board. And I think that's what this soft release approach gives us, is, you know, you just pay the salary of the mahouts, which you will be paying anyway, and you give it a try. You're not $20,000 in debt to a donor who expects, you know, some certain results, or you haven't invested all of this money, or you haven't made a big deal about it. You know, you haven't said, oh, we released these elephants today and they're never coming back. And, you know, so it really frees up elephant conservationists to try certain things with the, you know, the knowledge and the safety net of the mahouts. So I think with this, you can try stuff for 6 months. And then if you have data for 6 months or a year that proves, you know, no instances of human elephant conflict, or very, very minimal, then this should be enough to convince the government or the local community or the, you know, the scientific community that this is a good idea, you know. So this is where I think this soft release approach can really help with, you know, this difficult problem of wanting to release elephants, but understanding that human elephant conflict is a big issue for a lot of people.
Right. Very, very interesting and very exciting, you know, that you're talking about the soft release and the several challenges and the aspects involved. So let me conclude this event with the first question that I would like to ask to Anabel, that what was the trigger for you to initiate this study about learning the behavior among the males, you know, and then taking it forward to the next level. You're also talking about using these as findings in improving the welfare conditions of the males. So what was the trigger for you to initiate the study?
Like, sorry, Sanjay, can you repeat the question? Because
So
sometimes your microphone got a bit.
So what is the trigger for you to initiate the study? So what was that trigger? When it occurred to you that I need to initiate the study about all activity?
If I will redo the study, what are the key things? If I will do somewhere else?
No, I would like to repeat it. Let me rephrase my question. So what was that one thought which made you to study this particular topic? What was the trigger?
Or what were the reasons for you to take up this project? Different reasons why you started this project, or what were the...
Oh, okay. Sorry. Why I started this project?
Yes, sure.
Because what we were always focused on the females, and then we have in 2017 it was this male came to the center, and that they couldn't log in. His name it was Sayo, and everybody was afraid of him. He was very aggressive male, and nobody wanted to handle him. And we ended up with this male that nobody know how to handle him. So we did many things. And then just right after, we rescued 2 males, Tongkun and Bumpen. And for any reason, he really likes this big tusker that was in the picture. And they start this kind of like a friendship. And I started thinking maybe this guy is just pissed because he's alone and boring, and he's, you know, and because I don't know, I say, okay, well, we always focus on the females and we have all of this project, but these males are what we do with the males. They are alone in the forest, they don't have anything to do. Maybe this is why they're upset. The good thing is that the mahout of Sayo, he was also not a traditional mahout. He became mahout by accident. His name was E. And I pitched him the ideas like, okay, maybe we should try to do some things. And because he was not traditional mahout, he was very much open-minded and do some things. So we started to bring more elephants for the breeding program, more males. We also start to see that males, they not only have this, that the mahouts, they don't know how to handle, they know how to handle, but they are much more difficult to handle safely. And then when we try to put this male with the females, and they didn't know when the female were in estrus, the breeding skills was very poor. So I was started thinking, there is a big gap of social skills in these males, and And we need to do something about that for the breeding program, but also for the safety and for the welfare. And I think this is how this male study was born. It was just by observing this Sayo, and at the end of the day, he was the boss of the group. Everybody loved him. He was the key. So I think he teaches us that sometimes what we think is bad behavior is just, maybe he was just screaming like, hey, please, can we do something? Because I am tired of being alone in the forest. And he improved their behavior a lot. And it was much more easy to handle. He was like a parenting this Docker and son, the guy with no task, and they make all of this friendship. And the Mahouts were much more happy. He started to be with the females. So I think he was just the reason. He was the reason I have this idea. Just, we have this problem elephant. We have 3 or 4 males. They seem to like each other. Let's prove that, but then let's prove that with some data, so then we can help more males. Because if I use telling as my personal story, it's just a storytelling. But if we have some behavior and some data that prove that support that, Sayo will not be the only one, right? And these 8 male elephants will not be the only one who have the chance to be males. And males, they need to spend time with other males. They need to spar. They need to breed. They need to do all of this behavior that unfortunately they are not allowed to perform as a daily basics in captivity. Yeah.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I would like to conclude the Q&A session here. And I would hand it over to, okay. So I think...
Yeah, Sanjay, I think I'll take it over, no problem. So I just thank Anabel and Michael for almost spending 1.5 hours. And, it was a very insightful, I think, talk, and also the discussion, which kind of gave a full picture of, elephants in Laos and also the work that they're doing there. So, so thanks a lot for spending time with us, and hope to, have you again sometime later. Thanks a lot.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
hosting us. This is a really cool experience, and I didn't know when you contacted us that this is the thing I've been watching on Facebook sporadically. So it was cool to be a part of it after being a spectator for so long. And I think what you guys are doing is really cool, and I look forward to seeing more interesting talks in the future.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. We'll keep in touch. Thank you. So we close the session. Thanks everybody for being part of this event. Thank you. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.